Hi, hello, welcome. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you on the webinar on linking humanitarian assistance and social protection. We will talk about the common principle quickly and also give you some country example to launch this first day of Ancient PW and speak about a bit social protection. So we will be together for the next 60 minutes. So I hope you will enjoy it all the time. Please interact with us during this time. You can use the chat to introduce yourself. You can also follow in the chat. There will be some links that will be popping in during the presentation for you to follow. Feel free also to use the Q&A box. So you can ask your question, but you can also like each other question so we can see the ranking of them. And our amazing speaker today will try to answer them either by writing directly. So if you want to address them, please ping them in your question, or a bit during the Q&A session at the end. We will try to have that. We will also share very soon with you a Miro board, so a whiteboard for you to contribute and share the experience that you have on this topic in the different country contexts across your professional experience through this Miro board. And obviously, this event is recording, and we will share with you the link soon, also the Q&A. But it's a bit enough for the housekeeping. And let me introduce the speaker of today that we have the chance to have. So I'm Céline Sinskibia. I'm your host for today, and I'm very glad to be here. I'm working with the CALP network as a technical advisor and social protection focal point. I'm also a member of the SPIAC-B working group on linking humanitarian assistance and social protection. And here comes my colleague Charlotte, who is the coordinator of this working group. She will invite us through the common principle and present that from the beginning of the presentation. And then we have all the illustration from country context of these different principles, so you will have concrete experience sharing. So I'm glad and honored to introduce our quite amazing panel for today. First, Dr. Sintiketa Fogbe from ECOWAS Commission is director of she is director of the Humanitarian and Social Affairs. Then we will have Kamiran Shivan, the director of program for Rwanda Foundation Development, co-chair of the Iraq Cash Forum, who will also speak a bit about his experience, followed by Chris Oberlach, UN World Bank Liaison Officer, working for the World Bank Country Management Unit and the UN Integrated Office for Somalia. And last but not least, we will have Tanya Nino, who will present you a bit of work on as Program and Policy Officer on Social Protection with WFP in the Regional Bureau of Panama. And let's go through it. No more presentation, and I will let the floor to Charlotte Willow, who work at UNICEF HQ in the Social Policy and Social Protection team. She is the coordinator of the SPIAC-B working group on linking humanitarian assistance and social protection. And before joining UNICEF, she worked for several years on research and technical assistance in the area of child and gender-sensitive social protection. To you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Celine. Thanks a lot. And again, welcome also to everyone online. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Yes, I will talk you through the common principles, which is the title and topic of our webinar today. But before I do that, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of our group, the SPIAC-B working group on linking humanitarian assistance and social protection. First of all, SPIAC-B is the Social Protection Interagency Cooperation Board, which is a global forum which aims to enhance coordination and advocacy around social protection. And the SPIAC-B has several working groups, and we are one of them. Our members come from over 30 organizations, including the UN, INGOs, but also donors and the Red Cross and Crescent Movement. And I think what makes our group actually really unique is that we have both social protection stakeholders and experts, as well as humanitarian stakeholders. And they both come together in this group to work together and develop products together to really enhance what is our common objective, which is, as the name suggests, to strengthen the linkages between humanitarian assistance and social protection. And maybe just quickly in terms of what do we actually mean with linking humanitarian assistance and social protection? Well, there's not one definition, obviously, and it depends a lot actually on the country context you're talking about and the crisis you're looking at, but also the maturity of the existing social protection system in that country. But just as an example could be that in the case of a humanitarian crisis, humanitarian stakeholders who want to implement a humanitarian cash transfer program, they can try to align that program to an existing pre-identified social protection program, or they can try to piggyback on some of the delivery mechanisms that already exist in the country. Or on the other end of the spectrum, they can go completely through the national program and just support filling gaps by expanding a program horizontally or vertically. And well, why is linking humanitarian assistance and social protection important? Well, there's several reasons, but one is obviously that we're living in a world of ever more protracted crises, with increasing humanitarian needs and increasing funding gaps. And in this context, it's really important to work together and to find new ways of working together to enhance the coherence across interventions, across the HDP nexus, the humanitarian development and peace nexus. And linking the two really provides an entry point for both humanitarian and development actors, but also for government and non-governmental actors to come together to work to what should ideally be our common goal and objective, which is to support and provide assistance to vulnerable populations. We have, for our group, identified 4 areas of work. I won't go through them in detail, but just to let you know that we also have a page on socialprotection.org where you can find more about our product and the work we do. And we also have a newsletter, so please feel free to reach out in case you would like to receive more resources and content on this topic. But now coming to the actual topic of today's webinar, which is the common principles for linking humanitarian assistance and social protection. I think Celine will also share the link to the document in the chat. It is now also available in French and Spanish. And really, the document was developed last year, actually, through a consultative process in our group with the support of a consultant. And the idea is really to inform our ways of working to enhance the coherence between interventions across the HDP nexus, as I mentioned earlier. So the document covers, so the principles cover different topics such as coordination, funding, localization, and I'll talk you through them in a bit. But just in terms of the audience, who's this document meant for? Well, it was, first of all, meant for us as a working group and our member agencies, of course, to inform our collective work and our advocacy on this topic. But then it is, of course, also meant more broadly for all humanitarian and development actors working in this space. So again, we invite you to have a look at the document and share it with your colleagues. And now coming to the actual principles. So you will see that the document is divided into 4 types of principles. The first 6 ones, which you can see on the slide, are what we consider applicable to all crisis contexts. And then we have 4 additional ones which are specific to certain contexts, certain crisis contexts, such as displacement, conflict, or climate shocks. But starting with the first principle, assessment of entry points. Here we're calling on all humanitarian actors to actually assess the existing social protection system in the country before designing any humanitarian response. Because the idea is, of course, that ideally we don't want we want to avoid undermining existing social protection efforts through parallel structures. And just as an example, for example, in Ukraine, the CCD network, they developed a series of tools for NGOs to help them in thinking how their HCTs, humanitarian cash transfer programs, can be aligned to the existing social protection programs. Then principle 2, and I'm sorry I'm going through them quickly now, but as mentioned earlier, we'll hear a bit more in terms of country experience in a bit. Principle 2 is about ensuring the meaningful and safe inclusion of vulnerable populations. And here we're asking all actors to conduct really a needs and vulnerability assessment prior to any response that disaggregates information and risk by gender, age, disability, ethnicity, and other relevant groups for the context. And in terms of design options, we're calling on everyone to really implement strong feedback and grievance mechanisms to ensure the inclusivity of all our responses. Then principle 3 is about the engagement with local actors. And here we are asking, or we're saying that this requires, first of all, a clear mapping of the local actors in the space where we're interacting, and a clear strategy on how to engage with them. And this, of course, also includes, or the aim is to include those local actors, not only in the delivery, but also already in the design phase of any response, and also understanding their barriers, but also capacities. Principle 4 is about flexible financing mechanisms. And here we're calling on all donors to do more, first of all, to close the gap between humanitarian and funding streams, including through the creation of new pooled instruments. And in countries facing recurrent or protracted crisis, we're also asking to work in close coordination with the IFIs and national governments to develop joint multi-year financing strategies with effective layering and sequencing of different funding streams. Then coming to principle 5 is about coordination. And here, in many countries, many contexts, there actually already exist different coordination groups, such as social protection coordination groups, but also cash working groups, obviously. And yeah, we're calling on all of these groups, if they don't exist yet, to first of all establish them, but when they exist, to strengthen their work or to collaborate really in terms of analysis, planning, and joint delivery also. Then principle 6 is about joint monitoring and evaluation of our efforts to really document what is working in terms of linkages and what is not. And I will come now through the last 3 principles, which is principle 7, which applies to contexts with recurring or predictable shocks, including climate shocks. And here we're asking all actors to make more coordinated and complementary contributions to system strengthening. So in context where the social protection system is more mature, this means really working together to strengthen the national shock responsive system, or building a shock responsive system. And in context where the social protection systems are more nascent, we're asking to develop really good transition strategies to eventually then transition to nationally led systems. Principle 8 is about seeking entry points to preserve elements of social protection or building the foundations of safety nets in conflict settings. And this, of course, implies a very strong conflict sensitivity, do no harm, and protection risk analysis before anything else. And to really use this information in any response and response planning. Then the last principle, principle 9, is about expanding access to social protection for forcibly displaced migrants, as we know that these groups often don't have access to the social protection system. And I can see Celine on the screen, so my time is almost up. And here, the ask is really to work together with national governments to identify inclusion or entry points for inclusion of these groups. And I will stop here just to let you know that we are working on a series of briefs that will help practitioners to implement those at the country level. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and check out our page also. And back to you, Celine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having this nice journey through all the common principles that you do quickly for us. I will invite everyone, of course, to have a bit dive on the common principle that we share on the chat. But also, if you want to join the Miro board, you are most than welcome to share with us your experience in link with one or multiple of these principles. So for that, you can just choose the link in the Miro board that Charlotte will put in the chat, and then you can join in. When you decide to share on one specific principle, please, you will have the 9 there. Please zoom in, select the one you are really interested in. So for example, the coordination one, and there share with us some enablers that you might have and giving your idea and experience by putting it in the sticky note directly. It might be an enabler, it might be a challenge, or maybe you want to share with us some resources, some comments. So feel free to share with all of us some of your experience on that. So I see quite a lot of personnel joining. That's nice. Feel free once again to zoom in, zoom out with the button plus and minus, and also to move. You can take the end and you will move around as you want or through the line below. So during the time you will discover that, and we will let you some more time, even we will keep it for a day long after the presentation of today. If you want to contribute, you are more than welcome. And now, because we have quite an amazing panelists to also share some experience and make this principle a bit more concrete, a bit more real, I will be very pleased to, and I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Sintiketa Fa-Ugbe, she is the Director of Humanitarian and Social Affairs of the ECOWAS Commission. She has over 15 years of professional experience working with political, civil affairs, law enforcement, and security-related institutions. She holds a PhD in international and rural development from the University of Reading in the UK. Dr. Ugbe has overseen responsibility for producing 3 ECOWAS policy and strategic counter-narcotics documents. She is currently engaging in the ECOWAS social protection framework, which has been recently published, and it's why she is with us to give it a bit more of her insight on the common principle. What are the entry points linking humanitarian assistance and social protection? Please, Dr. Sintike.
Thank you, Celine, for that excellent presentation. Just permit me to say that I'm grateful to the Social Protection Interagency Cooperation Board for inviting me to this very important webinar. Again, I'm here to share with you, distinguished experts globally, one of the concrete actions that the ECOWAS Commission has taken to illustrate one of the core principles that Charlotte excellently shared preceding my presentation. But before I go to discuss the core principle number 1, let me repeat it again. It says, systematically assess entry points to linking humanitarian and social protection when designing and implementing emergency response. That's the core principle number 1. But before we go to that core principle, it's important that we understand that the board clearly states that your context, it is the context that determines whether there is a connection between humanitarian assistance and protection. Is it possible or is it necessarily desirable? And our context in West Africa, with protracted humanitarian crisis, with worsening security, humanitarian situation, with over 7 million internally displaced persons within our region, with increasing food insecurity estimated at 3.9 in June this year to be food insecure. Of course, many other covariate shocks. Our context desires, and it's important for us to link humanitarian assistance to social protection. The second thing the core principles in the opening paragraph says, is that it has to be valuable. It has to be valuable to us. As a region, is this of value? Of course, it is clear to us that if we make investment in humanitarian assistance and social protection linkages, the value for us outweighs all the constraints and all the challenges. With the context and the value okay for the ECOWAS, for the West African region, the next thing I want to go in, what has ECOWAS as an organization working with member states tried to establish as an entry point? And our entry point that I want to share with you is the ECOWAS Social Protection Framework and its operational plan. This social protection framework aligns with international and continental commitments, and it is our entry point for the core principle. We know that it is the entry point that we can use to foster better assistance and better social protection coverage. It aligns to our vision of ensuring that we address the convergence between humanitarian assistance and protection for our vulnerable population. Now, let me just go quickly, we don't have time. What is the ECOWAS Social Protection Framework? It's a guideline, it's a principle, and therefore it is our entry point. And most of the guidelines and principles aligns to most of the core principles that Charlotte excellently presented preceding my own comments and presentation. It serves as a point of fostering synergy for collaboration to broaden existing social protection programs through a more coherent and effective approach. It serves as a starting point for the ECOWAS Commission, the member states, and partners to enhance synergy in addressing the challenges of improving the welfare, well-being of vulnerable population and at-risk population. So the framework is our entry point. You may now ask me, how is the framework, which is your entry point, now relevant to the humanitarian and social protection linkages? If you look at our framework, the objective clearly states that, and maybe going specifically to objective number 4, it says it has the potential to bridge the linkage between humanitarian and development nexus gaps, to ensure that we have robust institutional arrangements that consider the multidimensional nature of social protection. Now, where do we have within that framework the commitment, the mandate to ensure the strong linkages? I'll go to just 2 principles. There's no time to explain all the principles, but one of the principles says we shall establish and maintain a national system of social protection capable of timely scale up in case of large covariate shock. In which case, if we look at the first principle is saying, don't reinvent the wheel when you have humanitarian crisis. Make sure when you have humanitarian crisis, you build on the existing social system. Make sure in case of humanitarian crisis, you don't establish new structures that undermine the existing structure. That is what our principles we help to foster among and within member states in their cross-border challenges, and as ECOWAS Commission taking the lead with all our partners to translate this principle into action. The second principle that I want to share with you here is to position social protection within humanitarian context. Again, this aligns to the core principle number 1, because the core principle number 1 says that we should make sure that our response plan build on existing social protection system, bringing the two together. The core principle number 1 says we should make sure when we have support for humanitarian assistance, it should include the strengthening of social protection. I won't have much time to go, but I'm just trying to show you key examples in our social protection framework that relates to, systematically assessing the entry points and trying to establish those linkages. To quickly round up, you may ask me, Madam Sintiki, how will you operationalize this core principle number 1? And Charlotte, in her presentation, has already laid the foundation. What will we do to operationalize these entry points that we have now established and make sure that this core principle comes to life? I'm just going to highlight to you what is in our operational plan.
Thank you, Dr. Sintiki.
Building. Oh, sorry.
I'm so sorry to cut you. It was so full of energy and idea. Feel free to ask your question in the Q&A if you want to know more, because we have an excellent teaser about what it's about. So please go on, ask your question, and you will have the written answer very soon. It's so much on our plate right now, but we see that there are existing frameworks that are designed like the one we just speak about this ECOWAS social protection framework, when we have way for entering it, having entry point, thinking together through all that, even for a very complex area like that. So once again, thank you, Dr. Sintiki. It was amazing. For all the person in the audience, feel free to ask all the questions that you may have, because I have to cut a bit short the presentation. I'm sorry for that. But now we will move to our next speaker, who is Cameron Shivan, is the Director of Program Rwanda Foundation Development. He's also the co-chair of the Iraq Cash Forum. Cameron brings a wealth of experience from the public sector, private sector, and humanitarian industry to his role as Director of Program at Rwanda Foundation for Development. And he will speak a bit more and illustrate a bit more the Common Principle 3 on all the implication, all the character and the importance of the work. Thank you, Cameron.
Yeah. All right, so thank you so much, Selena. Thank you, everyone. So today I'm highly honored to participate in this important webinar on humanitarian assistance and social protection. So I appreciate the invitation to be a part of this distinguished panel of experts and practitioners globally. So here I would like to share some insights and learning from our interventions into the community that Rwanda Foundation has already faced. So this meeting, this webinar, indeed is important for enhancing our collective understanding and fostering engagement with local actors and ensuring we consider the space availability for civil society engagement in each country. From our side, I would like to highlight on some initiatives that Rwanda Foundation implemented so far. In the context of Iraq, so generally in the context of Iraq, where ethnic and religious diversity is both a strength and at the same time it's a challenge. So Rwanda Foundation for Development conducted some initiatives for the sake of youth engagement, local engagement, and also to enhancing the civil society engagement in our initiatives. So we conducted some initiatives under the name of Youth Peace Ambassador Network. So that exemplified the comprehensive approach to social protection by engaging youth from diverse backgrounds in leadership roles. And this initiative was not only to address the need of the community cohesion and peace building, but also incorporated elements of social protection by targeting young people between the age of 15 to 25 in various communities in Iraq, because in Iraq, there are a lot of government-based regions well known for its diversity and conflict. So here the program actively involved the local actors, universities, youth centers, CDCs, career development centers, to reflect Iraqi's diverse demographics. The selected ambassadors, youth ambassadors, underwent inclusive training in leadership, in conflict resolution, mediation, and communication skills. These are very, very crucial for the Iraqi context. So this implication was highly important for Rwanga Foundation to consider all these aspects in the Iraqi context. The things that we use it as a tools, as a stakeholders engagement and groups, the Youth Peace Ambassador Network initiative succeeded due to a robust framework comprising stakeholders, local stakeholders, businesses, local businesses, and the tools that we use it as supportive structures that collectively facilitated and sustained the program's success. So key stakeholders involved in this program, they were local schools, youth centers, and the Rwanga foundations were very crucial in identifying and recruiting and supporting youth ambassador to be a highlighted persons in Iraqi contest and also to be a part for the global competitions. So this approach, we were able to hire some people, and essential tools that we used included tailored curriculum, digital communication, because currently Iraq has faced in the transition forms. We are trying to use the digitalized tools in order to be facilitating the things easier and smoother. And we were using some platforms for continuous interaction, thorough monitoring and evaluation systems placed for sustainability of community engagement in our program. Moreover, a structured mentorship program included in this program as well. Why? It's highly important to enhance the initiative's impact and sustainability. So these elements indeed were combined to empower a diverse group of young generation, of young leaders to foster community cohesion and intellectual dialogue between various governorates in Iraq. And basically, Rwanga Foundation is not working in one specific governorate or one specific area in Iraq. So we are covering the whole governorates in Iraq for the sake of, as an example, let's say, to be a voice or to be an amplifier for the young voices to be heard globally and nationally at the same time. So these are the initiatives that Rwanga Foundation has implemented to be a part of the social protection and humanitarian assistance, as well to support the community and also to support the most vulnerable people that they have been deprived of having humanitarian assistance and social protection. And this combination will be occurred and taken place with close coordination with the governmental entities, with youth centers, and with youth leaders in the country and national level. I think I finished on time, right, Selena? And I'm very, very delighted. I'm very, very delighted for any questions in Q&A, and I'm happy to respond in the chat box. Thank you so much.
So yes, please. Thank you so much, Cameron. You give us a very different perspectives at the first presentation, but some really key things that you come from. So from the civil society engagement, the work as amplifier, which is so key to make sure that the voice are here, and how we can integrate that to much more accountability to the population, and how we do a better response together. That's a lot to think about. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
It's really nice to have you with us. So now, and I'm sure that you are a lot of questions again because you want to know more. So please feel free, go on the Q&A, and Cameron will answer to them by writing. Obviously, please also share your experience on the Mirable. And now I want to invite Chris Overlack, who will join as the next speaker. Is working at the UN World Bank as a liaison officer, World Bank Country Management Unit, and the UN Integrated Office for Somalia. Is supporting the strategic, analytical, and operational partnership between both organizations. Chris advises country leadership, task team, and the government to leverage partnership with UN agency and NGO in the implementation of more than $500 million in IDA resources through hybrid delivery modality. So I want to know more about that. And before taking up his role, he worked for the UN in different humanitarian and development coordination roles across Afghanistan, Somalia, Southern Africa, UN headquarters in New York. He is holding a master's degree in international relations from the College of Europe in Bruges and in political science from Sciences Po Bordeaux. And he will give up a bit of example sharing his experience about Somalia to link with Common Principle 8 and all the fragile context and how to link in such context. So back to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Celine, and thanks for inviting me. So I'd like to speak to the Somalia example and offer 3 reflections, really, that speak mostly to Principle 8, but actually to a number of other issues that you've presented earlier. So first, I would like to provide a little bit of background as to this interplay between the international community and the type of assistance that we're providing and the local context, both in terms of an emerging state as well as engagement with society, and then draw a few key lessons specifically as they pertain to building systems that are able to navigate those environments, and lastly to offer a few key challenges as well that that will keep us busy, but I assume a number of you colleagues online as well. So without going into too much detail, the Somalia context is largely aid dependent with limited domestic revenue. So over the last 12, 13 years, since Somalia last faced famine in 2011, we've seen a quasi-predictable humanitarian financing envelope for Somalia that evolves around $1 billion. And now that is due to the nature of shocks, but also to the shortfall in overall service delivery. And so in parallel, we've had, since 2019, 2020, had significant investments in social protection, both from a policy perspective, as well as a service delivery perspective. And I'll get back to these 2 points in a bit. Now, on the governance, from a governance perspective, it's an interesting situation in which we're operating in an environment where we don't have a forged constitution, and so we're kind of building the ship as we sail. And there's limited predictability in resource flows, specifically as they go to lower levels of government, security forces, etc., that operate in communities where humanitarian and social protection actors are present. So over the course of the last few years, we've seen literally billions of dollars in cash transfers, whether on the shock responsive safety net side or on the humanitarian side, that go into those very same communities. So there's significant risk of extraction and diversion. We're dealing with, at the same time, nascent institutions that don't really have functional assignments yet. So roles and responsibilities of who's doing what, who's in charge, are sort of emerging as we're moving ahead. That causes a number of problems I want to go to in a second here. And so over time, these pressures have resulted in aid diversion, most prominently in 2022 over the course of a humanitarian scale-up. And it's really a complex, fragile context at play here with an ongoing military operation as well. And so what I want to underline here, though, is that a lot of these risks and therefore the mitigation measures that we've been trying to put in place here aren't necessarily only tied to the fact that this is a conflict-affected context, but really to the overall political economies of a nascent state. Now, to speak to the key lessons, really, I want to focus on 4 things. The first one is building a legal framework and institutions that are able to take responsibilities for a certain set of roles across social protection and humanitarian activities are really critical. The second piece here is recent strides to advance vulnerability-based targeting to reduce the interference of gatekeeping that we've seen significantly. So for that, critical pieces are the development of a unified social registry, proxy means testing, which we've been able to do for the first time, to move away from status-based assistance specifically that drives displacement. The next step is really data sharing, avoiding deduplication across humanitarian and shock responsive safety nets. We've done that now for the first time, which I think is a huge advancement. And lastly, the need to continuously invest in elements that are able to establish identification and identity in a context that is relatively unstructured. So those are some of the advancements that have been able to help organizations navigate this environment. But as I said earlier, this is a long way away from being done. So a number of the challenges I want to reflect on back to the group here are tied to the complementarity of these large-scale systems that are running in parallel across humanitarian and safety nets, targeting approaches, beneficiary enrollments, systematic deduplication. Those are still issues that I believe, specifically at headquarters, that are of relevance to address. And lastly, the last piece that is sort of the nexus, if you will, to build adaptive systems that can carry over caseloads from humanitarian assistance into a more predictable safety net space, especially given the complex local and conflict-related dynamics. This is really something that we need to establish more of, and I'm happy to learn some lessons from colleagues online here. Thanks so much, Selina. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Chris. This was quite amazing, and it's great also to see something like very different in context compared to what we discussed before, as you say, on the nascent state that we have, but also on the military intervention that's going on. So all that complexity is build one to the other. So it's really very different, and how to navigate in that environment, how to take mitigation measure. You give some, that's great to have some example, but maybe one thing I really want to highlight much more is about thinking both the policy perspective and the programmatic one together at the same time in such complex context. So thank you for all that, and thank you to explain us a bit more and unpack that a bit more. So if you have questions, once again, you have the Q&A box. So feel free to share it with Chris by that time, so you will know more. And now we will have our last speaker to give an example, because I think it's plenty of that. And feel free to continue to share also the one that you have as an audience in the Miro board for everyone to know a bit more about that. So now we have Tania Nino with us, is the Social Protection Officer for WFP Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean. She studied political science and hold 2 master's degrees, one in Latin America study and the other in human rights from the London School of Economics. She has experience in humanitarian action and international development in Colombia, Asia, and Africa, as well as the Colombian public sector, where she has worked in leading government social protection agency at local and national level. Thank you. Back to you, Tania.
Thank you very much, Selina. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present on behalf of the World Food Program. And I just want to share with you an experience, a concrete experience of linking humanitarian action with social protection that we had in Colombia. So this experience is related to the large numbers of Venezuelan migrants that are in Colombia. It is started like intensively, more or less, since from 2018, where Colombia received almost 3 million. Right now, there are almost 3 million Venezuelan migrants living in the country. But this experience is more related to around 2021 and 2022, where the government decided to issue a protection statute to provide a permit to migrants with irregular conditions living in the countries. This was very important because this permit was not only to allow them to navigate society, but also with this permit, the government decided to open up the social protection system. And it did it basically through opening the social protection targeting instrument that is called SPIAC-B. This is a home survey. This is a means test that allow the government to classify people within poverty, extreme poverty, and vulnerability. This is very important because after this, they can potentially access subsidized health and other kind of social programs available in the country. It is important to note that is not automatically. It's not because I have SPIAC-B that I can access the social programs. But without SPIAC-B, it is basically impossible. This is the key part when the government made that decision, show the political will to integrate migrants. From WFP, and I will ask Charlotte now to please share the slide, for WFP and for the whole international community, it was very important. But we understood that if the government decided to open the system to the migrants, it was important to support the local authorities, because the decision was taken in Bogota to let the migrants to access SPIAC-B. It was a decision that was made at the central level in the capital. But this occurred, the actual registration of migrants to the SPIAC-B happened and occurs at the local level. So in WFP, we decided to support this operational and technical capacity of the local authorities, and we integrated or included over 533,000 people between national and migrants. It was a large operation, but it definitely was a turning point when talking about the integration of migrants into a social protection system, when we are talking about taking people out of the humanitarian assistance and getting them within the protection under the state. So this was a concrete example, and we decided to do this because it's very complex, it's costly, and Colombia was a country that wasn't used to receive that large number of people. And even though it decided to open up the system to migrants. Charlotte, if you want to remove the slide, it's okay, because I just wanted to show this. And I just want to close with some lessons that we could learn from this experience. First of all, the main enabler was that the political and leadership of the Colombian government. And this is very important because it was risky, it was costly, it has a lot of pressure, and it has to face a lot of difficulties in order to take forward this large decision. As I repeat, it was led by the government. But it also led us with some kind of important lessons. And there are two that I would like to highlight. First is that, as I said before, the decision was made at the central level, but maybe for another opportunity or for another country that would like to take this example, it is important to analyze, to examine which will be the consequences at local level. Because at local level is when everything happens. It's where the migrants live. It's where the local authorities have to respond. They are in the front line. And perhaps at the time we couldn't, the authorities couldn't calculate the special implications for this, and that's why we decided to enter and to support as an agency. And the other one, and we will finish with this, Salim, is that some people couldn't take the advantage of this opportunity because they didn't live in a permanent address. And if you don't have a permanent address, you cannot access the official social protection targeting instrument. This is a very common issue in social protection and when we are measuring poverty, that we need people to live in permanent address, and so many people are left out. I will leave it there. Thank you very much, Salim. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And I hope that you all follow, and without my lacking in my introduction, Tanya was obviously speaking about Common Principle 9, about the forcibly displaced and migrant population, and how we can link all that with humanitarian assistance and social protection. So definitely, if I get you right, one of the big enablers is the willingness and leadership of the government, because the social protection was already in place, but then it's a lot of guts to embrace all the migrants coming in and try to integrate that to get out of a usual humanitarian system and to really embrace that. And thank you for the lesson learned that you share. It was really great. So based on that, I will really want to thank all the panelists. If you have questions, please continue to put your question in the Q&A. I think you have some beginning of answer at the moment. I also very quickly see the mirror board, and I see that there are a lot of quite amazing experience share a bit everywhere. I see maybe a bit more challenge than enabler for now. So if you have idea, please continue to share in the coming days. And maybe we can move around a bit and see a bit of Q&A with all the panel, because I didn't want to let you go like that. It was great to have all the presentation, but maybe if all of you can take something like a minute, because we are almost on time, but not so good, to maybe give us a piece of advice, a tip, a lesson learned that you have personally for us to better link humanitarian assistance and social protection in the longer term or next time we see each other. Is one of you want to begin with my super large and super tricky question? Tanya, Chris, if you want to jump in, please. I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Okay, yes, I think I would like to highlight something that the first panelist mentioned it, and is that as humanitarian agencies, we must take into account what is already functioning in the country. And when I say that, I'm thinking about poverty line, for example, cash programs, for example, which is the value of the transfer that the government is providing, and why it's doing that, and what will be the impact of the humanitarian actors providing higher value transfer, or which will be the difference between humanitarian transfers and social protection transfers, because this can really harm the country. We don't have this into account. So I think sometimes we need to go deep in understanding what is going on in the countries we are working on. I think this is key, because this happened in Colombia. Before getting to this kind of large and important coordination between government and the humanitarian community, it was a lot of confusion. It was a lot of actors, and we all were giving different kind of transfers, and the government decided to make a decision and put a threshold, because we weren't taking into account what the government was doing. So I think this is key to better link up humanitarian action and social protection. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Great takeaway for me. And yes, I will put that on my to-do list, definitely. Chris, do you have another view or something to complete that answer?
No, I mean, one of the things that came to mind as you were wrapping up my intervention earlier was sort of this delinking of policy and program responsibilities and decisions. And I think this is really critical. I think oftentimes we're really narrowly guided by programming imperatives, and this is not to say that that's not important, but really to try and take a step back and try and see what are the policy conversations, what are the systems that require longer term investments, and that provide a platform. Again, I think ID is a critical one. Tanya mentioned it earlier in the Colombia example as well. If you don't have a permanent address, but you have a biometric ID that people can trace your identity, I think that's sort of a critical one. For me, the key takeaway from the Somalia example, it's really honestly never too early to engage with government on these things, right? So the other speakers spoke a lot about existing, sort of building humanitarian systems around existing safety net spaces. I mean, we're coming from a place where we started off with nothing at all, and it was basically the other way around, right? But sort of entrusting systems and being courageous to take that sort of above the horizon, above the program cycle type vision is really been sort of my key takeaway from the Somalia example. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's definitely complete to each other. Cameron or Dr. Sintiki, do you have some takeaway that you want to share with the audience before we close the session? Yes, please, Cameron.
Yes, from my side, very delighted. Regarding the Iraqi context, indeed, it's very difficult and challenging, but we are always trying to adapt and align with the global and international standards and international standards and regulations to be a part of for the sake of enhancement and improvement and development sector in Iraq. And thank you so much. And everyone has got our emails and contact details, and very delighted to respond under the Iraqi context. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for being there. Dr. Sintiki, are you still hearing us? Maybe you can share the...
Yes, just a quick one to just say that I'll try to round up and to say that there are key enablers that we can use to operationalize the humanitarian and social protection linkages. For us is capacity building, and there are resources there to transform. A resource is one of them, a multi-stakeholder platform. And this is what we have used to develop our social protection framework. We brought in not only our member state, the UNICEF, World Food Program, UNDP, a multi-stakeholder approach. Two quick ones: advocacy. We can't do this without advocacy for those who commit resources. And for us as ECOWAS Commission, our next level is to take it to the parliamentarians and say, this is what you should demand at the national level. These linkages should be established, and you should know that there's a framework that you can use to make sure that your member state comply with some of these core principles. Finally, I'll say that regional dialogue, like you have shown, what we also continue to practice at the regional level. You are a great example, bringing these core principles, pushing it out there, making people to understand. At the regional level, we're going to follow your example, making sure we use our regional dialogue forum to enhance understanding, ensure that minimum standards are established, and also to make sure that we have the commitment to deliver on a practical level, just like Iraq and Chris have shown, and Tanya has shown at the local level. Thank you.
Super.
Thank you. So do you want to come in here then, Cameron?
No. That's it.
Sorry. But please, Chris, go ahead. It can be a discussion, definitely.
Sorry, can I just, for next year, until next year's HMPW, maybe just a question to the SPIAC working group here and to the agencies on board. I think it would be really useful if you could help us kind of think through a number of these, the practical examples on complementarity, on targeting, transfer values we mentioned earlier, right? How what some practical lessons specifically in fragile context have been in here. We're struggling significantly on beneficiary enrollment and deduplication over data privacy concerns. If you can help us with there's a lot out there, right? But if you can help us kind of think this through to beef up the practice underneath the principles, that would be very useful. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for all that question. I think there's a couple of other webinars during the HNPW weeks that will address a bit of them or give a bit of more knowledge about social protection and how to link better. And some of the question seems to be part of that. So please go back to the agenda and register to the session. It will be maybe answering part of your question. And Charlotte, I will leave you with maybe couple of the final word to wrap up a bit the Miro board, but please continue to contribute to that. It will help us feed, share our experience, etc., to make sure that we know more. So please, Charlotte, go ahead.
Thanks, Celine, and thanks. No, and I wanted just quickly on Chris' comment. Thanks actually for that segue. We are, as I mentioned, as a working group, developing on a series actually of short briefs, which then also link to practical examples at country level for all of the 9 principles. So thanks for bringing that up. And yeah, for all those, the members of the SPIAC-B working group who are online, I hope you heard what Chris said. And yeah, we're happy to, once we finalize those briefs, to of course share them with everyone. And thanks for everyone who contributed to the Miro board. We have a lot of great examples and inputs. I can see that, as Celine mentioned, it seems like we have a few more challenges than actually enablers, but that's fine. I think the challenges can in some cases actually show us what is missing. So I'm seeing, for example, on principle 1, the lack of appropriate platforms, lack of leadership on this nexus point of aid, humanitarian assistance, and social protection. So I think these are actually challenges that especially the international organizations here in this webinar can probably take on, and of course also we as a working group for our advocacy. I also see, and again, I invite everyone to have another look at the webinar, because we also have some great resources already and links that have been shared. Great, we have a quite specific example actually from Lebanon on people with disabilities, an enabler that's great for Principle 2, so safe inclusion. National efforts with the support of donors and partners have worked there to actually ensure the inclusion of people with disability. Great. There's too many sticky notes to go through them, but again, thank you all. As Celine mentioned, we will be leaving this mirror board open, and please continue to add on it, because this will help us as a working group also to in our work on the briefs that I mentioned earlier. That's it from my side. Thank you, Celine.
And thank you all for joining. I think we are at the end of the webinar. It was really nice. I wish we have more time to go through a discussion with all the panel, but it was great for the illustration. I think we have run almost all over around the globe to give example of what might be done. So thank you once again for all the speakers and the panelists to be there today. It was really super interesting to listen to you, and I learned a lot. And yes, feel free to reach SPIAC-B, to reach Charlotte if you have any question, if you want to know more about the principle and the work of the working group. And thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. That's it? Thank you,
Yes.
Charlotte.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you very much. We keep in touch. Thank you, Celine. Very nice, very kind. Thank you. Bye.